feel?
Well, we don't feel that he's actually a hero. We just feel that he's a man who was at the right place at the right time, who did the right thing. As far as what happened to him, it's very disappointing and it's very sad, you know, but things happen, and God willing, people learn from them. And hopefully these mistakes won't happen again.
Are you suing?
We are. From the beginning. Because I was so angry. I can't describe the feelings that I had. And again, I thought it was revenge that I wanted, but it really wasn't revenge. It was justice. But I think we're at peace with it now. I think I'm not angry anymore about it. And we still don't know what's going to happen with the lawsuit anyway. I know they threw it out one time and it was brought back in. I mean, they could still throw it out. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen with it. It's just sitting there, just like my husband did.
The main reason the story got out because of a lawyer, because he wanted her
yes.
to put everything in paper.
And what do you hope to accomplish with the lawsuit?
Well, I think some things have already been accomplished, thank God. I think they learned their mistakes from Katrina. I saw that with Gustav. They did things a lot differently, actually. I would hope that they wouldn't stereotype as bad. I think there was a lot of stereotyping, intentionally or not. Unfortunately, it did happen. And I say this because my husband was at this house, our house, and he was arrested, and our neighbor across the street, who was at his house, he was picked up and sent to a different place, wherever he wanted to go. So unfortunately, there was a lot of stereotyping, and I hope that they learned their lessons, at least from this story, that, don't judge somebody just by appearance.
Finally, Zeitoun, has it shaken your faith in America?
Not, the life, I think, moving forward, because now the life getting better. Now we see a lot of improvement in the city, and the children. I mean, for me, like myself, I like to forget all about it, and I would like keep look for in the future with a smile, because I mean, the past doesn't take us anywhere. We should just go ahead, focus about rebuild. Do right things, and build relationship with everybody else. Especially we have a lot of new people in the city, and we have most of the all original people back. We have like now in my neighborhood, we have plenty new neighbors, and we have the original neighbors. We back together, and everything go back close to normal.
Abdelrahman and Kathy Zeitoun speaking to us from New Orleans. When we come back from break, we'll return to Dave Eggers, the celebrated writer who chronicled their story in his latest book, Zeitoun. It just won the American Book Award. Stay with us. Germaine, Saint-Germain. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 850 stations on Pacifica and NPR and low-power FM and college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks, on Dish Network, Channel 9415, Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV, Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish for any radio station to take. As we return now to our global broadcast exclusive, we go back now to writer Dave Eggers, whose nonfiction work, Zeitoun, tells the story of Abdelrahman and Kathy Zeitoun in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina 5 years ago. Zeitoun going from American hero to terrorist in the eyes of the U.S. authorities. I spoke to Eggers Thursday and asked him to describe the conditions under which Abdelrahman Zeitoun was held when he was arrested in New Orleans in the aftermath of the storm.
The prison had been erected by trustees of Angola, and the guards were manning it, along with it being a home base for a lot of National Guardsmen. And so once they were handed off, that was the last the arresting officers saw of them. And then they were in the hands of this whole other body that took a look at, our assumption is that they took a look at the last names and origins of Nasser and Zeitoun in particular and thought, we might have something really interesting on our hands. And so that's when they were visited by Homeland Security representatives, and that's when they had a very strange circumstance where another man was put in their cage, and sort of in an attempt, Zeitoun believes, to get them talking, would try to provoke them with anti-American rhetoric. It was very strange. And but I think that this, again, the successive nature of handing them off from one body to the next, and once they were put on a bus and sent to Hunt Correctional Facility, then they were lost even deeper in the system. No one was really tracking them and others because very good record keeping was not being kept, and they weren't subject to the same rights of prisoners at Hunt who had been processed adequately. And so and I think that, you take a lot of National Guardsmen, many of whom, and military personnel, many of whom had been in Iraq and Afghanistan, and many of whom were believing the hype that this city was out of control and that they were entering a war zone. And it's no wonder that they would say to Zeitoun and Nasser, you guys are al-Qaeda, you guys are Taliban, and suspect them. And I think that climate right then was very troubling. And so it led to this military solution to a humanitarian problem. And I think that there was a paranoia in the air that didn't serve anybody very well. And Ralph Gonzalez, one of the arresting officers from New Mexico, told me, he said he had been led to believe that they were entering a war zone, and that what they were sent there to do, fully armed with machine guns and body armor and armed to the teeth, was an operation for command and control. But what they found within hours of landing in the city was that they were needed mostly for search and rescue. And so I think that as much as so many agencies tried to do their best, I think that the climate and the misinformation and the misplaced priorities led to some very unfortunate results.
Zeitoun got very sick in the jail and in the prison.
Yeah, first he had, a very bad cut on his foot in that he was getting infected while he was at Camp Greyhound. And here's a guy, he's old school, he's incredibly resilient. He's not one to complain about an injury, but he couldn't get help. Doctors would go to and fro, and they wouldn't stop to help him. And then once he was at Hunt, he couldn't get any help at all, and he felt like he had an incredible pain in his side that was eating away at him, and he didn't know what it was. And so, but of course, he got no medical attention there. And again, he was left there to think, because nothing was improving. He had no reason to believe that he might ever be released. If you haven't gotten adequate legal representation and you're not able to contact your family, what reason does he have to believe that he will ever get out? And I think a lot of the prisoners that did Katrina time were in that same circumstance, where none of the rights that we expect were there, and it turned into a Kafkaesque situation.
Dave Eggers, when Kathy finally learned that he was alive, and then started to make calls and even had a lawyer and even knew he was at Hunt but told he wasn't, how long was that time from when he had been picked up September 6th to when he was finally released?
It was 3 weeks before she heard from him. That was when the missionary who Zeitoun had given his phone number to called Kathy. And that's when she first knew that he was even alive. And what was interesting was that even then, it was extremely difficult to extract him from Hunt. And it was only because they had means to hire a private lawyer. They had a property that they could put up against the bail, and because they had set bail for all of those charged after Katrina with minor offenses, looting or stealing a sausage in one case. The bail was astronomical, in some cases $100,000 for stealing a small piece of food. And so this was the case with Zeitoun too. The bail was I think about $100,000, and so they had to put up their office building as collateral to get him out. And even then, when there was a court hearing finally set, Kathy wasn't told where it was, couldn't find where the courthouse was, where they were holding these hearings. And when she called to find out, they told her that she couldn't be told where the court hearing would be, that was, quote unquote, private information. And it's interesting that what Kathy says is that after all of this and all that she went through, it was that moment that really broke her. It's that she knew that her husband was alive finally, and all she wanted to do was reach him and be able to see him again. And that's when, even then, the bureaucracy and this sort of humanity and this callousness sort of prevented her from doing so, and that they wouldn't even tell her where he was, where the trial would be held. And so I think, I do hope that everybody learned something from this, but I think it's a lesson in how this sort of everyday inhumanity or everyday, what might seem like small abuses of power or the lack of recognition of our common humanity can cause incredible suffering.
How is it that Todd Gambino and Nasser ended up in prison for so many more months, up to, in Todd's case, a year?
They didn't have they and hundreds of others didn't have the money to hire private lawyers. And without that, you didn't have a prayer. There are a lot of really great public defenders who took it upon themselves to search out these prisoners who were lost in the system and to try to track them and find out what they were charged with and give them representation. But that took many, many months to sort out. And the Zeitouns did what they could for their friends, but it was, there's only so much that you can do, and there were so many others that were in the same situation. So, Todd is out now, and he's doing fine. He's actually working in a shallow oil rig off the Gulf, which is work that he had done before. And Nasser went back to Syria. It's a shame, but there are hundreds of other stories like it.
And now the lawsuit to, as Kathy said, to bring some kind of justice to stop this from happening again.
Well, what one lawyer said was that they had better get in line. There are thousands of civil suits against the city, the state, FEMA, Homeland Security, government, and there isn't a whole lot of movement with any of these civil suits. The most famous among them is the case of the two men who were shot on the Danziger Bridge, and the officers who are being held responsible for that. Obviously, that case is